Jacob's Well, a popular swimming hole near Wimberly, will remain closed.
Jacob's Well. It comes as Stage 4 water restrictions continue in Wimberly.
Jacob's Well in Wimberly is infamous for its dangerous depths and haunting tales, having claimed at least 12 lives. Recently, courageous adventurers plunged into this enigmatic sinkhole, uncovering a chilling discovery that seized global attention. What lurks in the shadowy depths of Jacob's Well? Let's investigate the mystery of what makes this Texas landmark so dangerously captivating. The deadly allure of Jacob's Well. Jacob's Well is more than just a swimming spot. It's home to a lot of wildlife like quail, roadrunners, turkeys, water snakes, sunfish, Guadalupe bass, crawfish, and blind salamanders. It's also the longest cave in Hays County and the second longest fully underwater cave in Texas. Many people call it a spring, but Jacob's Well is a natural wonder that Native Americans have respected for thousands of years. The water in Jacob's Well comes from the Trinity Aquifer, an ancient underground reservoir. Rain and surface water have been seeping through limestone rock for millions of years, creating a complex system of underground chambers and tunnels. This makes Jacob's Well a unique geological site. The first known mention of Jacob's Well is in a 19th century book by Jacob de Cordova, an early Texas real estate agent. He described the well as perfectly round and carved out of solid rock, with water so clear that you could see small objects from the surface. But there's more to this story. Although de Cordova's description was meant to attract settlers, he owned a nearby land. Some believe the well's name comes from a biblical tale.
Here at Jacob's Well, we have a story of water.
Where Jacob, a patriarch, dug a well that never dried up. Initially, Jacob's Well spouted water like a fountain, making it hard for divers to enter due to the strong currents. Over time, however, the flow stopped, letting divers explore further and learn more about this natural wonder. Most visitors enjoy relaxing by the well's edge and swimming in the cool, clear water. Some jump from nearby rocks into the narrow opening, while the more adventurous try free diving, sometimes going as deep as 100 feet through the cave's narrow passages. However, only certified divers are allowed to explore the deeper chambers. One main passage requires a 5-hour journey to navigate. This environment is tough and dangerous, and several divers, including Kent Mopin and Mark Brashier, have sadly lost their lives here. But why did they take such risks? What drove them to face the dangers in Jacob's Well's dark depths? The answers might be hidden in the underwater tunnels of this fascinating Texas landmark. Jacob's Well starts with a steep drop, a vertical shaft that goes down 25 feet. It seems like the bottom, but it's just an illusion. Over the years, many have gone down to this level, looking up through the clear water at the sky, maybe picking up a fossil, before the strong flow of the aquifer, pumping about 6,600 gallons per hour, sends them back up to the surface.
It's like a vacuum to the middle of the earth. It feels like it's going to suck you in.
In the early 1950s, the first scuba diver pushed beyond this shallow end. Today, diving deeper into the well is common and considered relatively safe. Divers now go down, fighting the upward current. They often leave their fins above to prevent stirring up the silt, which clouds the water. This descent is a steady, slow fight against the push of water, followed by a gentle landing on a gravel-covered base. From here, a corridor heads west, then plunges straight down to another level at 55 feet deep. Here, divers need to turn on their lights. The descent here is slow, almost like a pearl gently falling through thick liquid in slow motion. The sinkhole, though narrow, barely 20 feet across at its widest, is cluttered with false chimneys, indecipherable scratchings on the walls, and crevices home to giant catfish. It feels cold and detached down here, the entrance above a distant speck of blue light, casting an eerie, soft glow like moonlight. A tight chute, with a ceiling so low you almost have to crawl, leads divers down to 75 feet. Here, amid the narrow confines, one might spot crayfish and the occasional eel that journeyed from the Sargasso Sea, destined to return there to breed. This squeezed-through section leads to a taller, narrow chamber, with a small pocket of air at the top, a brief respite in the oppressive underwater world. This chamber marks the beginning of the path to the fourth chamber, a cavernous space no more impressive than the rest of the well, but sought after due to its hard-to-reach allure. Among those drawn to its depths were Kent Maupin and Marc Brashier. Kent, at 21, was already a seasoned diver, an assistant instructor, and worked part-time at a dive shop in Pasadena. He had long been intrigued by Jacob's Well, eager to discover just how extensive the submerged cave system was. Despite the known dangers, as 4 divers had previously drowned in the very section Kent wanted to explore, the allure of the unknown pulled him and his friend Mark, a 20-year-old student from San Jacinto College, into the depths. Together, they led a group from Pasadena to Wimberly, where they camped near the well on a struggling resort property called Wood Creek. On the night of September 9th, just after midnight, Kent, Mark, and a few others geared up and dived. They reached the final narrow passage that had claimed lives before. Without backup lights or a safety line, Kent and Mark decided to push further. Kent slid off his tank to maneuver through the tight space, dragging his tank behind him. Mark followed, disappearing into the tunnel. But this wasn't the worst part. Joe Moy, diving with them, watched in dismay as Mark vanished into the dark.
To date, our team has mapped over 7,000 feet of cave.
He tried to catch Mark's attention with his light, but to no avail. As Joe's own air began to run low, he tapped on his tank with his knife, a desperate signal for attention, but there was no response. He left his light in the passage, hoping it would guide them back. But upon surfacing, the previously clear water of Jacob's Well was now a murky brown, stirred up by 2 divers in panic. Joe knew then that Kent and Mark were gone. The deaths of Kent Maupin and Marc Brashier serve as a grim reminder of the dangers hidden beneath the beautiful, deceptive calm of Jacob's Well. The next morning at Jacob's Well was filled with uneasy anticipation. The search for missing divers. In the early morning at Jacob's Well, a troubling event took place. Dibble, who owned a local dive shop, and a group of divers heard that 2 young divers, Mahan and Brashier, had disappeared in the deep waters of the well. Dibble and his colleague, Paul Battaglia, knew they had to act quickly, even though everyone felt uneasy about what might have happened to the missing divers. At 9:51 a.m., a police officer gave them an update, making it clear how serious the situation was. Dibble and Battaglia quickly teamed up with the Hays County Volunteer Body Recovery Team and headed to Wimberly. By the time they got there, it was already dark, making everything feel even more grim. Other divers had been searching non-stop since Mahan and Brashier disappeared. They were exhausted and struggling with the thought that their fellow divers might not come back. Reports started to come in, with one diver, Kus, saying he had seen the bodies buried under gravel in the cave during his 90-minute dives, but he couldn't get them out. As Dibble looked into the dark waters of Jacob's Well, he felt a deep sense of dread. He thought it might be better to wait until morning for a safer attempt. Since the bodies weren't going anywhere, they decided to regroup in the morning. When the search resumed, there was a new urgency. 2 divers went into the well, carefully moving through the unstable gravel that could collapse at any time. They tried to clear a path with small tools, but this only made the cave more unstable. Dibble heard mixed messages about whether the mission was even possible, so he decided to get directly involved. Dibble, along with a game warden named Calvin Turner, dove into the cave. They placed extra air tanks at different depths and laid out a safety line behind them. They checked every possible spot, including the ceiling crevices, to make sure they didn't miss any bodies. The cave's narrow passageways, almost blocked by gravel, made their progress very slow. Dibble kept a close eye on his air supply. With only 1,100 pounds of pressure left, he knew he had about 10 minutes. He squeezed into a tight opening, one hand on the safety line and the other holding his light. Suddenly, a shower of tiny gravel pieces hit his mask. The danger of the situation became very real. It was a big mistake to try the recovery under such risky conditions. But this wasn't the worst part. Just then, a gravel slide happened. The water around him turned muddy, and he was plunged into darkness. Dibble was trapped, unable to move his arms or signal for help. With his air running out and panic setting in, he faced the frightening thought of drowning. Trying to stay calm, he took out his regulator and started drinking the water, an instinctive move to avoid inhaling it. This triggered a survival response in his body. He thrashed around and by some miracle managed to free himself. Through his blurred vision, he saw Turner holding out the spare tank's regulator. Dibble grabbed it and took a deep breath, filling his lungs with much-needed air. He had inhaled so deeply that air had entered his stomach.
After a number of deaths in the depths of the cave, it's now only open to experienced research diving.
As he moved towards the surface, the water pressure around him dropped. This caused the trapped air in his stomach to expand rapidly. Unable to release this pressure, Dibble kept rising, enduring intense pain to avoid decompression sickness. When he finally surfaced, his stomach was so swollen, it looked like he was about to have a baby. After removing his breathing apparatus, he screamed in agony. It would be 12 long hours before he felt any relief. His condition was very rare and similar to a type of lung embolism where air pockets expand dangerously. Normally, someone in his state would need recompression therapy in a special chamber to normalize internal pressure. He was rushed to the Brooke Army Medical Center and placed in a recompression chamber, but this did little to ease his suffering. But this wasn't the worst part. His pain was relentless until a doctor, suspecting further complications, ordered an X-ray. The results were shocking. A rupture in the wall of Dibble's stomach, leading to a severe inflammation called peritonitis. This was as critical as having multiple burst appendices. Surgery was inevitable. When they operated, his abdomen was as tight as a fully pumped basketball. As Dibble recovered, the search for missing divers resumed at Jacob's Well. The team enlisted Don Broad, a seasoned diver from Austin. Known for his straightforward attitude and long-standing fascination with Jacob's Well, Broad had been exploring these waters since his teenage years. Despite his reluctance towards recovery missions due to the tragic nature of the task, he couldn't ignore the need for his expertise. Broad's dive was successful, but chilling. He managed to retrieve the bodies of 2 divers who had perished in 1965, along with their belongings and logbooks. Their equipment was eerily preserved, with flashlights still burning after decades underwater. He also surfaced with the remains of several other divers whose identities remained unknown, a grim reminder of the dangers of deep-water diving. Meanwhile, Dibble faced his own struggles on land. Hospitalized and heavily in debt, he found himself financially unprotected, with his insurance expired and no support from the county. But the diving community wasn't about to let him fend for himself. Friends and fellow divers launched fundraising campaigns, featuring articles in diving magazines and organizing an underwater film festival to help cover his medical expenses. By Christmas, Dibble was cleared to dive again. His first mission was personal. He aimed to seal off the deadly passageway in Jacob's Well that had claimed so many lives. Armed with heavy bags of cement and a small team, Dibble returned to the site, determined to prevent any further tragedies. As the winter sun set on their endeavor, they worked tirelessly to make the well safer for future explorers, marking a poignant return to the waters that had nearly claimed his own life. With the new barrier nearly done, Jacob's Well was ready to reveal more secrets. The Jacob's Well fortification. As Don Dibble put on his wetsuit, he couldn't help but notice the large scar on his stomach, a reminder of past worries.
It's really funny because when we come out here and we're setting up for a dive, especially in the summer.
He was going back into the well. The team of divers was busy packing cement into bags and lowering them to the first underwater level with ropes. They then freed the cement bags from the ropes and moved them by hand to the 75-foot mark, a place known odd for its narrow passage. Here they planned to build a strong barrier. Moving the cement was as tough as airline workers handling a plane full of luggage, a vivid comparison to their heavy underwater job. Surprisingly, the work progressed faster than expected, and by mid-afternoon, the wall was solid. They hammered metal rods among the bags to reinforce the structure and left gaps to let water continue flowing from beneath the earth. The tragic deaths of Kent Mopan and Mark Brachaye at Jacob's Well had deeply affected Dibble. Determined to prevent more tragedies, he put a metal grate at the cave's entrance to keep people from entering the dangerous underwater maze. However, many ignored his safety measures. On a follow-up dive, Dibble was shocked to find the grate removed, replaced by a note saying, "You can't keep us out." Mopan, an experienced diver who started diving at 12, was one of the many drawn to the dangerous allure of Jacob's Well. But this wasn't the worst part. The well's dangerous reputation was well deserved. In 2001, author Louis Bond wrote about the well's treacherous cave system. Divers faced a maze of tight corridors and misleading passages, like the false chimney, which seemed to offer an escape but often led to deadly traps. The cave floors, covered in gravel and silt, could quickly become clouded, blinding divers if disturbed. Despite these dangers, the allure of Jacob's Well was hard to resist. Authorities put up a stronger grate, but the risks remained. In 2015, young Diego Adam, only 21, faced a terrifying moment during a free dive. At 100 feet deep, he lost a flipper, making it hard to swim. Filled with adrenaline and gasping for air, Adam made a life-saving decision to let go of the flipper and swim to the surface. His quick thinking and diving skills were crucial. He surfaced just as he was running out of air, narrowly avoiding disaster. Jacob's Well tells a story of adventure, bravery, and the constant quest to explore the unknown. It reminds us of the thin line between being daring and being in danger. But in the diving world, Jacob's Well is not the most dangerous spot. There are many other dive sites around the world with unique challenges and significant risks, attracting thrill seekers who love the underwater world. Take the Eagle's Nest sinkhole in Florida, for example. It's often called the Mount Everest of diving because it's over 300 feet deep, with complex passages and almost zero visibility. This site is known for its dangers, claiming the life of Charles Odom, who ventured into an underwater chamber known as the Ballroom. Sadly, he lost consciousness deep within the cave, and despite quick rescue efforts, he didn't survive. Another dangerous spot is the Temple of Doom in Tulum, Mexico. This beautiful cenote lures divers into a maze of underwater caves and tunnels. The clear waters and stunning surroundings hide the high risk of getting lost or trapped, posing a constant threat even to experienced divers. The Shaft sinkhole in Mount Gambier, Australia, is another challenging dive site. Discovered by a farmer in 1938, it draws divers eager to explore its vast underwater cave system. The main chamber, called the Shaft, is a huge underwater cavern where several divers lost their lives in 1973. Their bodies were recovered in a major operation involving deep diving training from the Royal Australian Navy. But this wasn't the worst part. Consider the Samisen Hole in the Gulf of Thailand. Known for its 280 feet depth, it has dangerous currents, busy shipping traffic, and predatory marine life like barracudas. Visibility is almost non-existent, and the waters are filled with unexploded bombs, adding to the danger. Despite these hazards, the site attracts divers who are excited by the challenge and the chance to see unique marine life and historical artifacts. Do these extreme dive sites challenge the very limits of human endeavor, or merely flirt with unnecessary danger? Leave your comments and subscribe for more.